I'm showing any form of aggression in my relationship or in my dealings with anybody, that aggression can escalate very easily. If you watch how I handle situations and you realize that I'm unable to deal with stress properly or stressful events properly or emotional issues, then those are red flags that you must seek help. Unfortunately, in our side of town, seeking help is a taboo. Mental health, if you see it,
it means that you're going cuckoo.
Yes. But I think that, and I'm on a crusade to always recommend that if you identify that, the first look for professional help. Let's not do what the typical Christian Ghanaian will do, which is go to the pastor and go speak to the pastor. Seek professional help. And by the way, when I speak like this, I don't usually announce myself as a pastor, but I am a pastor. But I say, seek.
That's why I was careful not to introduce you as a
Yes,
pastor.
yes.
You stated categorically that you're coming in the
the capacity of
in the capacity of
a family life advocate.
Yes.
Yes, as a family life advocate. But that's really what it is. Instead of seek the right, some pastors have been properly trained. So it is an issue of seeking help from somebody who has been trained to be able to handle these issues properly and guide you on how to deal with it. And engage the person in a conversation where, because sometimes we are not even aware how aggressive we are.
But sometimes disappointment can move you to do things that you probably... So someone that you're in a relationship with is probably not necessarily aggressive naturally.
Yes.
But disappointment in the sense that, I mean, the person says, I'm no longer interested, I'm leaving. How do you manage a situation like that? And they don't even give you a reason as to why they want to leave. It just says, I think I fell out of love with you.
Okay. Let me take you back a bit.
Okay.
There are certain foundations that, and I'll get to if you're in a marriage, but I want to go back to getting into relationships and because that's where you started from. One of the things that I recommend is that any two people that want to get into a relationship, you should get an authority figure that both of you are willing to submit to and listen to. What happens is that when there are conflicts or there are issues that you are unable to discuss with each other, you need an outlet. That outlet could be that authority figure or a professional help, okay, or a trained help. So usually if you have such outlets, then they would be able to help you. So I am overcome by emotions. I am in denial. I am going through issues that I am unwilling to accept what the reality is. That third party would now help me or even direct me, guide me to getting the professional help that I require. Usually when people feel they don't have any other option, that's when they decide the worst case scenario. So create an environment where there are options available to resolve the issue. If you are thoroughly disappointed in a manner where you think that the best way is to walk away from the relationship, that may be the case. But it will be good to have an opportunity to, have some kind of conversation about it and even prepare each other. Sometimes people think that divorce is easy, but divorce is not easy. Sometimes it's not the easier option. Sometimes it's not the best option. It's not always that divorce is the best option. So it will be best to have some form of engagement. That engagement may not be possible with your partner, but get a third party that would help you to be able to deal with that issue.
So in a circumstance or in a scenario where there is no such person, for instance, okay, so this is a real life story. A man who doesn't listen to anybody.
Yes.
And even his family warned the woman before they got married that if
you've been warned
and
you've realized that
in the house,
he's the final authority to himself, and you decide to subject yourself to that, and then I pray for you.
You died, yeah.
I pray for you. No, but you see, the thing is this. Some of us have found ourselves in that situation where, because I keep saying that in the Ghanaian society, men are trained to be
lords,
to be kings.
To kings.
So and some of them carry it to another level where they think that a king is not accountable to anybody else. And a king is not accountable to the queen. So if you're a king, your wife is a queen, and you are accountable to the queen. so even going by that logic, if you're going by that logic that the man is a king, then your wife is a queen, and you must be accountable to the queen and the king's men around you. You have to be accountable to. So if we're going by that same logic, then the issue of not being accountable is flawed. It's completely flawed. But unfortunately, we've been socialized that way. And that's why some of us have taken on a crusade to try and renew the minds of people who listen. That, hey, you can feel like a king, all right, but it doesn't mean that takes away the right of a woman. It doesn't mean that the woman has to be subdued. It doesn't mean that our definition of submission should be do what I say and that's it and it's final.
Yeah. So before we go into your ABCs of managing disappointments in relationships, what advice would you give to anyone who is in a relationship where there's violence? And violence in this case, like I'm saying, the narrative is changing now. It's not only the women who are getting beaten, some men are getting beaten up in their homes. Unfortunately, society frowns at such cases, so you can't even really, the men are unable to report to the police station. What do you say about violence in a relationship? Should we do WWA and keep sitting there and hope and pray that it gets better? Or should we just opt out? Is that a point to say, this is it? Enough is enough,
no,
I'm out?
I don't think opting out is the first solution. The first solution is, I mean, one of the things that I've been confronted with the reality is that if my wife, my daughter, I have a 26-year-old girl. If she marries a wife beater, will I keep her in there till the day she dies and then I'll say, oh, I was holding on to my faith and praying for her? No, the first thing is that let's do, see, there are some issues that are handled by the state. If you are violent towards each other, whether we are married or not, the state will have to deal with you on that front. So the person has to be duly reported. We have to start separating the issues and allowing systems to operate the way they should operate. You see, we've come from a generation where we think that being Christian means that you have to subject yourself to a certain form of
autocracy.
No. The society has evolved over the period. If you have somebody who is violent, the state deals with that issue. If the person has a psychological problem, there are avenues for that to be dealt with. When those things are dealt with and you would want to continue the relationship, that is fine. But the first point of contact is that the state has to deal with it. And situations where men feel what is the word? They are unable to go and report, which is really the reality. There's a story where this man went to, I don't know if it's still called Dofsu, I'm not sure what the current but they went there to report violence against him, and they met the policewoman and said, "Oh my God!" And these are.
And it's happening.
Yes, this is a real story. So these are ways in which sometimes people then will have to hide and make society feel. But let us break out of that shell and be able to get the state to deal with the issues the way it has to be dealt with. Pastors are covering up. Counselors are covering up. All of that. But at the end of the day, the person dies or the person get bruised. Yesterday, I met somebody who had a large cut on her cheek. And in the conversation, she says, my parents actually were, my mother was a pastor, my father also in ministry, and they were encouraging me to marry. They actually arranged this marriage for me. And on my wedding day, my husband took a bottle of whiskey whilst we were walking into the car and was drinking, and I said, oh, this is not the right place or time to be drinking the whiskey. He put the bottle down and got physical. So she has, on the wedding day, has a huge scar on the cheek. She's living with that for the rest of her life. Now, the question I ask is that is that what God wants us to be? Is that the kind of people that God would expect us to be? That we are abused and subdued because of submission or because of
it's modern day slavery.
Yes. So these are the realities that we need to deal with. I encourage people, break out. If anybody comes to me and says that my husband has touched me, the first point is that go and report it. Until we start dealing with those issues, people have to learn that there are repercussions for their actions. You see, there are no consequences. We live in a society where we don't experience it, so everybody does what they want to do and they get away with it. This is not even just a relationship issue. There are consequences to our actions. So if you decide that you're going to get physical, you're going to disrespect your girlfriend or your wife, or the state has to deal with you. That's a basic human issue. It's not. It doesn't even have anything to do with a religion. It's a basic human issue. I can't be violent towards my neighbor. It is absolutely not acceptable.
Right.
Okay. So
now let's go into finances. So many a time you meet a man or you meet a woman, and both of you are of a certain financial status, and so you foresee the future being all gloomy. I mean, all sweet and juicy. But after marriage, the realities hit you, and sometimes it takes a downturn. And most of the time, we find one party. I know that my cameramen are saying the women. We find the women leaving. Yes, we find the women leaving the men. Because, okay, when I got married to you, you said we're going to do this, and now we're not even living in a duplex, we're living in a whatnot, and I don't like the new environments, the neighborhood is full of blah, blah, financial mishaps.